Eleven's sacrifice. The suicide pact between Eleven and Kaylee isn't subtle foreshadowing. Episode 7 laid it out explicitly when Kaylee proposed they both stay behind when the Upside Down collapses. Her logic cuts through any sentiment. As long as they live, their blood carries Henry Creel's genetic material. That makes them weapons the government will hunt forever. The only way to break the cycle is eliminating themselves when Vecna falls. Think about how that scene played. Callie spelled out the entire plan while Eleven listened without protest. When Callie said they wouldn't leave with the others, Eleven's face showed acceptance, not horror. Ross Duffer confirmed to press that Eleven appears to agree. That's not ambiguous setup. That's a death sentence delivered with a full season to prepare viewers. But here's what makes this theory feel like misdirection. The Duffers originally planned Eleven's death in season 1 when she destroyed the Demogorgon. They've been building toward her sacrifice since the beginning, with Brenner's warnings about her powers eventually killing her. Except 9 years of audience investment changes calculations. Making her suicide pact this obvious creates space for someone else to take her place. If Eleven's death feels inevitable, then the real question becomes who substitutes themselves. And that brings us to the character whose entire arc has been about protective sacrifice, Steve's protection. Steve Harrington dying would break the internet, which is exactly why people think he probably survives. The character who was written to die in season 1 as a stereotypical evil boyfriend has transformed into the show's most beloved protector. Joe Keery's charm saved him 9 years ago. That same audience devotion protects him now. The evidence stacks both ways. Ross Duffer joked on The Tonight Show that after giving Steve black eyes and scars for 4 seasons, the next step would be death. His selfless arc feels complete. The pact with Dustin raises stakes perfectly. Unlike Nancy or Jonathan, Steve has no defined future beyond Hawkins. His death would permanently resolve the love triangle without choosing sides. But watch how the Duffers actually treat him. Steve survived every close call in Volume 2 without serious injury. Keery told the press he's very happy with his ending, and fans are gonna like it. That doesn't sound like someone whose character got killed off. But if the most feared death isn't happening, where does the real sacrifice come from? That question points directly at the character whose entire story demands completion. Will's Circle. Will Byers started everything when he vanished in season 1, and the Duffers have stated his story comes full circle. That phrasing carries weight when you're predicting who dies. Season 5 gave Will powers channeled through the hive mind, distinct from Eleven's blood-based abilities. His psychic connection to Vecna runs deeper than anyone else's. When Will hurts, Vecna hurts. That creates a devastating possibility. What if killing Will is the only way to permanently destroy Vecna? The connection could work both ways. If Will channels his humanity while under Vecna's control and chooses self-sacrifice, it completes his journey from victim to hero. Vecna himself foreshadowed this when he told Will he'd help one last time. The Upside Down remains frozen on November 6th, 1983, the exact day Will was taken. His fate appears cosmically tied to that dimension's existence. Except the Duffers also confirmed Will's powers aren't permanent and disappear when Vecna dies. That suggests his arc involves losing abilities rather than dying with them. Killing Will after spending 4 seasons rescuing him would feel gratuitously cruel and waste every mission Joyce undertook. Ross Duffer emphasized Will finding really who he was through his coming out storyline. That language implies survival and self-discovery. The full circle might mean Will ends where he began, powerless but safe rather than dead. But while Will's survival seems likely, there's another character whose narrative purpose has quietly expired: Jonathan's ending. Volume 2 quietly positioned Jonathan Byers for death through elimination of purpose. His relationship with Nancy ended definitively when they acknowledged they shouldn't be together. He carried a ring, but never proposed. His role as Will's protective brother concluded when Will came out and received the acceptance he needed. Jonathan now has 0 narrative threads left to resolve. Look at his trajectory through the season. The melting room scene where Jonathan and Nancy nearly died felt deliberate, like the writers testing audience reaction to losing him. Unlike other characters, Jonathan lacks defined post-Vecna aspirations. He's not romantically attached. His family responsibilities are fulfilled. His character arc reached completion. That makes him expendable in ways Steve and Hopper aren't. Analysts noted Jonathan as a dark horse candidate, specifically because his death wouldn't devastate the core ensemble the way losing Dustin or Mike would. It would shatter Nancy, who'd carry guilt over their failed relationship. It would crush Will, who finally felt accepted. Joyce losing another person after Bob and almost losing Hopper would be brutal, but survivable. His death scenario writes itself. Jonathan protecting Will, or Nancy, completing his arc of selfless family devotion. A heroic sacrifice that provides stakes without fundamentally altering the show's emotional core. The question is whether the Duffers choose obvious heroism or something more unexpected. Speaking of unexpected deaths, there's one character designed specifically to die without breaking hearts. Murray's explosion. Murray Bauman represents what critics called the living embodiment of an expendable character. He provides comedic relief and conspiracy theories without holding emotional weight for the core group. His death would tug heartstrings without fundamentally destroying the show's emotional architecture. That makes him the perfect sacrifice candidate. Fan theories envision Murray going out spectacularly rather than tragically. The popular scenario compares him to aliens, pulling a grenade and locking himself in with demodogs, setting the whole thing on fire. He'd deliver one last sarcastic line before becoming a hero on his own terms. The death would provide necessary stakes while sparing fans from losing characters they've followed since 2016. Murray also fits the established pattern perfectly. Stranger Things, historically, kills newer beloved characters instead of original ensemble members. Barb died in Season 1, Bob in Season 2, Billy in Season 3, Eddie in Season 4. Every season sacrifices someone the audience loves, but who wasn't there from the beginning. Murray joined in Season 2, making him vulnerable under this formula. His role as the guy who translates Russian and connects dots doesn't require survival. Unlike Dustin's scientific knowledge or Nancy's investigative skills, Murray's contributions can end without leaving gaps. The writers positioned him as useful, but not essential. That's a death sentence in a final season that needs casualties. But Murray dying still feels too obvious for the Duffers. There's another character whose recovery makes her survival seem guaranteed, except nothing is guaranteed. Max's awakening. Max Mayfield spent nearly 2 years in a coma, with her consciousness trapped in Vecna's mind, prison called Camazotz. Episode 6 changed that when she finally woke up, escaping through Holly Wheeler's help from inside the mindscape, and Lucas's presence anchoring her to reality. Sadie Sink confirmed it wasn't Kate Bush's song that saved Max, it was Lucas. Her survival carries narrative weight beyond the emotional reunion. Max now provides critical intelligence about Vecna's vulnerabilities after exploring his mindscape for 18 months. She knows his fears, his weaknesses, the layout of his psychological architecture. That information becomes essential for defeating him. You don't invest an entire season in a character's recovery just to kill them immediately after they wake up. The Duffers had their chance to kill Max in Season 4 and chose resurrection instead. She technically died for a full minute before 11 brought her back. Killing her now would feel redundant and needlessly cruel after everything Lucas endured watching her comatose body. Caleb McLaughlin hinted at uncertainty when he said if they survive the ending, they prove they're meant to be together. But that phrasing suggests survival is the likely outcome, not death. Max's knowledge makes her too valuable to lose. The question becomes whether her intelligence about Vecna's mind is enough, or if defeating him requires something the show hasn't revealed yet. Hold that thought, because there's one character fans refuse to let stay dead. New character curse. Stranger Things follows a brutal pattern with newcomers. Barb died in Season 1, Bob in Season 2, Billy in Season 3, Eddie in Season 4. Every season, the show introduces someone likable, builds audience attachment, then kills them while protecting the original ensemble. Season 5 newcomers face the highest statistical risk. Dr. K represents the clearest antagonist, death. Linda Hamilton plays her as a kind of vampire hunting 11 to harvest Henry Creel's blood for new experiments. Her demise would provide justice without emotional devastation. She's positioned as someone whose death feels deserved rather than tragic. That makes her elimination almost guaranteed. Derek Turnbow emerged as a suspected target the moment he appeared. Reddit immediately predicted he'd be the new Bob or Alexi, or Eddie, the lovable side character introduced specifically to die. The Duffers have established this formula so clearly that fans spot it instantly. Creating someone audiences care about just to kill them raises stakes without touching core characters. Turnbow fits that profile perfectly. But here's where it gets interesting. Kali occupies unusual territory. She returned after Season 2's controversial introduction and proposed the suicide pact with Eleven. The theory suggests she might sacrifice herself so Eleven doesn't have to, taking the fatal consequence alone while helping Eleven disappear. That would complete her redemption arc while preserving the show's heart. The question becomes whether the Duffers stick to their established pattern or subvert it one final time, and that connects directly to how the mechanics of death actually work in the finale. Death mechanics. The finale's structure dictates how deaths occur. Destroying the Upside Down requires planting a bomb near the exotic matter powering the wormhole. Someone must stay behind when it collapses. That setup makes sacrifice deaths explicit rather than accidental. Eleven's scenario plays out exactly as Kaylee proposed. She remains in the Upside Down during destruction, eliminating both Vecna and herself, ending the cycle of government experimentation forever. Her blood dies with her, preventing future weaponization. It's clean, heroic, and fits every piece of foreshadowing since Season 1. Hopper's scenario subverts that plan. He discovers Eleven's intention and finds a way to substitute himself, taking care of that problem without her death being necessary. He already wore a suicide vest as a failsafe in Episode 4, demonstrating willingness to die. His protective father arc reaches completion by literally dying so his daughter can live. Will's scenario involves their psychic connection. He uses his unique link to Vecna's mind to deliver a killing blow, but their bond means Will dies as Vecna dies. A cosmic exchange that ends where it began, bringing his story full circle through sacrifice rather than survival. Murray's scenario is pure spectacle. He locks himself inside with enemies and triggers an explosion, going out in the most badass way possible while the main cast escapes to safety. Each scenario serves different narrative purposes, but they all share one element. The Duffers designed them to feel inevitable rather than shocking, which brings us back to what the creators and cast actually say happens. Creator promises. Matt Duffer told The Hollywood Reporter, "The finale won't be a massacre. It's not Game of Thrones. There's not going to be a red wedding situation. He hopes by the time people reach the end, it feels like something inevitable happens." That language emphasizes meaningful deaths over shocking body counts. The cast reactions tell a different story about emotional temperature. Finn Wolfhard said he was happy with his ending, but also confused and sad, and also very happy. Gaten Matarazzo offered zero comfort, just told fans to get some tissues. Noah Schnapp echoed that warning. The entire cast reportedly cried uncontrollably during the finale table read. David Harbour emphasized the events pay off things started in Season 1, noting the series begins with kids in a basement and ends with them not being kids anymore. But here's what complicates predictions. Season 5 reportedly contains the most violent death of any season, occurring at the Max Z facility around the 1:13:45 mark of Episode 4. That death already happened in earlier episodes, meaning the finale itself might not feature graphic violence, despite emotional devastation. The Duffers want the ending to feel inevitable and right rather than shocking. Those specific words suggest they're avoiding surprise deaths that feel arbitrary. Every casualty should serve the story rather than manipulate emotions. So, if inevitability guides their choices, which deaths actually feel inevitable based on 9 seasons of setup? And more importantly, which characters have narrative armor nobody's acknowledging? Robin's risk. Robin Buckley occupies dangerous territory in the death probability rankings. At 9-2 odds, she sits higher than Steve, Lucas, or even Hopper. She's beloved, but not original cast, which historically puts characters in the kill zone. The Duffers love her. The audience loves her. That combination has proven fatal 4 seasons running. Think about her position in the group dynamics. Robin joined in Season 3 as Steve's platonic soulmate and the gang's linguistics expert. She provides intelligence and humor without being structurally essential to the core emotional relationships. Unlike Dustin and Steve's brotherhood or Nancy and Mike's sibling bond, Robin exists slightly outside the foundational connections. That makes her expendable in ways core members aren't. Her death would devastate Steve, potentially even more than losing Dustin. It would shatter the Hawkins crew without destroying the original party. That's the sweet spot the Duffers have targeted repeatedly. Someone audiences care deeply about, but whose loss doesn't fundamentally collapse the show's emotional architecture. But here's the counter-argument. Maya Hawke's star has risen so dramatically that killing Robin might feel like wasting a valuable asset. Her chemistry with the cast and her character's growth trajectory suggest survival. The betting odds put her at moderate high risk, not guaranteed death. She could easily survive if the Duffers decide beloved side characters have died enough. The real question is whether one more sacrifice is necessary, and whether that sacrifice comes from the side characters or from someone closer to the center than anyone expects. Hopper's substitution. The protective father arc has been building toward ultimate sacrifice since season 1. Hopper lost his daughter Sarah to cancer, spent years drowning in guilt and self-destruction, then found redemption through 11. His entire character journey points toward one conclusion: dying so his adopted daughter can live. Episode 4 planted the critical detail. Hopper wore a suicide vest as a failsafe, demonstrating he's already made peace with sacrificing himself if necessary. That wasn't throwaway costuming, that was setup. When 11 agrees to Callie's suicide pact, Hopper discovering her plan and substituting himself writes itself. He's been preparing for this moment across 5 seasons. His death scenario plays out cleanly. Hopper finds a way to take care of that problem without 11's death being necessary. He stays behind when the Upside Down collapses, or he triggers the explosion that destroys Vecna, or he physically shields 11 from a fatal blow. The mechanics vary, but the outcome remains consistent. Hopper dies. 11 lives. Joyce finally loses him for real after getting him back. The betting markets put Hopper at 11 to 2 odds, which suggests moderate probability rather than certainty. His survival wouldn't shock anyone, but his death would complete the most emotionally resonant arc in the entire series. A broken father finding meaning through the ultimate act of parental love. That leaves one character whose fate remains genuinely unpredictable despite all the theories. Someone the show has been positioning as both victim and weapon since the beginning. Vecna's fall, Henry Creel dying, isn't a prediction. It's a requirement. The villain must fall in a series finale, making Vecna's death the only guaranteed casualty. Betting markets reflect this at 7 to 4 odds, the shortest in the entire cast. The episode title confirms it. The right side up explicitly suggests his upside down world ends. Max spent 18 months trapped in his mindscape and discovered his deepest vulnerability, a cave containing his worst memory, killing a scientist as a child. That specific detail didn't appear for flavor. That's the weapon the gang uses to defeat him. Exploiting psychological weakness rather than overpowering him with brute force fits the show's pattern of using trauma against its villains. The question isn't whether Vecna dies, but how many people he takes with him. Season 4 established he grows stronger with each victim he consumes. If he's been feeding off the captive children at the Max Zeed facility throughout Season 5, he enters the finale at peak power. That makes him dangerous enough to justify multiple casualties during the final confrontation. His death also carries implications beyond just defeating the bad guy. When Vecna dies, the Upside Down might collapse entirely. That's the event requiring someone to stay behind, creating the sacrifice scenario. His fall triggers the chain reaction that forces impossible choices. So Vecna's death is certain. The cost of achieving it remains the variable. And that cost might be higher than any theory accounts for, because there's one possibility nobody wants to consider: multiple casualties. What if the Duffers aren't choosing between candidates, but planning several deaths simultaneously? The math supports this. Vecna dies. At least one major sacrifice happens. 1 or 2 expendable characters fall. That adds up to 3 to 4 deaths minimum, not including minor characters or villains like Dr. K. Season 5 already delivered the most violent death of any season back in episode 4. That suggests the creators aren't afraid of raising body counts when it serves the story. The finale being a 2-hour event provides enough runtime for multiple death sequences without feeling rushed. Each casualty could receive proper emotional weight instead of being crammed together. Look at how the setup distributes risk across different character types. 11 and Kaylee have the suicide pact. Hopper has the protective sacrifice arc. Jonathan has 0 remaining purpose. Murray fits the expendable hero pattern. Robin occupies the beloved side character kill zone. That's 5 potential deaths beyond Vecna, each serving different narrative functions. The Duffers promised inevitable rather than shocking, but inevitable doesn't mean singular. Multiple deaths feeling right because they each complete specific arcs would satisfy that criteria. Fans expecting one big sacrifice might be underestimating how many loose ends require permanent resolution. The cast crying uncontrollably at the table red suggests scale beyond a single loss. You don't get that reaction from one death. even an important one. You get it from watching multiple characters you love meet their ends within the same episode. But even with multiple deaths confirmed, one question remains unanswered. Can the Duffers actually pull the trigger on Eleven herself? You enjoyed this video and want to see more on Stranger Things. Click the video on the screen.